do.
Methodist prayer, huh? Good morning, everyone. I know this is for the NAACP. I recognize a lot of you from church, and where two or three are gathered in His name, God's in the midst because His church is there, and I'm so glad to be a part of you this morning. Let us bow and pray. Father, in your all-powerful and mighty name, we thank you, O God, as we stand upon your promises and your word. Lord, I'm asking today that you bless us with a successful convention, one where we bring our minds together, Lord, to do the justice that you have commissioned us to do. For Lord, we know that if we're going to do Jesus, we must do justice. So Lord, allow us to stand on the foundation of your word and fight a good fight. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
We have the agenda before us, and I want to welcome all of you, our guests. I had in here special guests. All of you are very special for being here, and I want to welcome you to this wonderful church that Fred Sims is pastor of. He's right there. The hospitality and the assistance that we've had from him, of he and his staff, has been terrific. I've always thought he was one of the most prophetic pastors in the state of West Virginia, and it continues to be. Now that the agenda is before you, I would like to introduce people who are part of our executive team. The director of this convention is James Griffith, who just passed the ball down to his president. James, would you stand up, please? You'll see more of him than you want to, I'm sure, this week. And then we have from Jefferson County. Would all the Jefferson County folks stand up? Probably had the furthest to come. Don is the president. There's Robert Graff, and then we have Nicola, who is working with environmental injustice, and that's a very important thing that we need to start looking at. And I said Don is the Antoinette. I'm sorry, Antoinette. Don's head was in your way. I didn't see you. But thank you so much for being here today. She's a very active member on the Jefferson. And then we have also from Jefferson, I believe, is Leah? Lene? Lene, would you stand, please? Yeah. And then we move to Greenbrier County, and we have Clifford Curry and Barbara Curry are here. Clifford is the vice president of the Greenbrier branch. Would you stand? And Barbara's with his wife is with him. Huntington. There are representatives from Huntington. Would you please stand? Our state. Thank you. Our state treasurer is Matthew Plant. His wife is our state secretary. You hear a lot from her. You get mail, and I'm sure email on top of email from Florence. And in the back we have Sylvia Ridgway. Sylvia, would you stand? Let them know. Sylvia is a past state president, and her friend Johnny. And Johnny, would you like to stand? Thank you. He's the navigator. He's the one who knows how to get here. Anyone else that, oh yes, we have one of my sorority sisters right here, Madeline Berger, who is representing the Bluefield branch, and she's always busy, and they have an excellent program in Bluefield where they have dinners to raise money for scholarship. And so one of our hopes and dreams is that we can have a college branch at WVU, at Bluefield State, at WVU Tech, at Marshall, and did I say West Virginia State? So that we want to have young people. That's one of our real goals, is that sooner or later, we're going to have to step back. It's important for our young people to know their history. If they don't know their history, they've lost their soul. If they don't know their history, they're doomed to repeat failures of the past. But we are so glad to have some young people here. And right here, we have a student from West Virginia University Tech. Would you stand, please? And we'll be counting on him to help guide us as we establish that branch. I also think it's very important for you to meet staff from the West Virginia Human Rights Commission. We have Tia Welch, who is the Executive Director of the West Virginia Human Rights Commission. And I think she said this is her home church. Did I get it right? Did I get it right? Yes. And Bishop Sims is one of her mentors. She has a top-notch investigator. He's a policeman. I know some of you might get scared. I know you don't have any guns or anything, but Joseph Saunders is one of his chief investigators, and because of his background and police work, he does an excellent job. Also, he has a sideline hobby that he has. He has quilts from days when the where the slaves would put out a quilt that would tell you whether to run or to stay. And he does an excellent presentation, and if you ever need something in your club or church, that would be a good person to ask to do that. So Joseph, stand up one more time so they can see you. And the president of the Greenboro branch has arrived, and Robin Crawford is the president, and he's doing an excellent job from Summers County. Greenboro branch includes Summers, Pocahontas, Monroe, and Greenboro. And Robin is working with us with our legal redress and on so many committees that he can't even count them. So Robin, would you stand and let us welcome you? Now I'm going to turn it over to James Griffith, who can speak about the coordinating committee, who has helped him, and he has some housekeeping matters he'd like to share as well.
Thank you, Loretta. Here in the last month, I thought I might be married to Loretta because I talked to her more than I've talked to my wife. Getting ready for these last 3 days. But I'd like to welcome you all here. I'm real excited about being here in Beckley. It's been quite a while since I've been here in Beckley. I was telling the bishop the other day that the last time that I was in Beckley, I kind of showing my age, we were downtown at a hotel called the West Virginia Hotel. And they said, well, that's been gone for about 30 years, you know. So, but it was a good time. We've been working real hard planning for this convention. One thing that we want to do, we wanted to try to build the local branch here. And hopefully with our activities here this weekend, that we will be able to help them. If we ever needed the NAACP, we need them now. But along with that, if we ever needed the Lord, we need him now. We need them both. And I'm so glad that we're back in the church. Years ago, that's where we were, in the church. And as I told the bishop yesterday, The Lord didn't leave us. We left the Lord. And we left the church. And when we left the church, we left something behind. And we left the community. And people could not connect with us. So I'm so glad and excited that Bishop Sims opened his church to us, and we're back into the church. Few housekeeping. This is the Lord's house. We want to keep it holy. Now, they're providing us some things to eat downstairs, and that's where we need to keep it. Let's keep this sacred up here, and let's treat our host the way we would like to be treated. Let's keep the church clean. We don't need to be eating up here. Let's eat downstairs. The church is going to have a funeral tomorrow. So to accommodate them, we've got to be out of here by 12 o'clock. So with us, we're going to shoot for 11:30. Make sure we're out of here by 12 o'clock. And so in doing that, we thought that we might have to adjust our schedule. We were scheduled to start at 9 o'clock tomorrow. Maybe we start at 8 o'clock tomorrow. So make sure that we get out of here by 11:30 tomorrow morning. Now, there are some things that we might be able to move up to today's schedule to help us out with that, to make sure that we're out of here by 11:30 tomorrow. I'm real excited. The banquet, I will be the master of ceremonies, and I'm going to start at 6 o'clock. If nobody's here but me and the pastor, I'm going to start at 6 o'clock. Now, all you latecomers, you'll get here in time enough to get in line to get your plate. But we're going to start at 6 o'clock. And please, let's show our appreciation to the bishop and his church for allowing us to be here. And let's have a good time this week. Thank you.
Recognize members of the planning committee that worked alongside with James. We couldn't have done it without Fifi. I call her Fifi, and every time I say that, somebody corrects me and says Janine Bullock. But Jean is a very special person, very organized, has been most helpful, well respected in this community, and we're just lucky, Janine, to have you. Valerie Hughes was also a member of the planning committee, and she's unable to be here this morning. I'm not sure about later. She's downstairs, okay. And then Mary Wicks is downstairs, who was kind enough to have breakfast ready for all of us. So I want to thank everyone. Reverend Schofield, how can we forget Reverend Schofield? He's the guy behind the camera, you know, so. And so he has been very, very helpful, because in times like these, people want to have a recording. Some people weren't able to travel the distance, so we wanted the benefit of their wisdom, and we called on Reverend Schofield, Deacon Schofield, and he was very, very helpful. I want to begin with the panel that we have on education, and it's my delight to introduce the moderator for the panel, Mrs. Patricia Wilson. Patricia is a gem. She has been from the day she was born. Her mother and aunt were seeds in the NAACP. I never went to an NAACP event in which they were not there. They were always present and very supportive. And I know they're looking down on you and say, "Go girl, you're still there." Patricia is a member of the sorority that I'm a member of. And in the regions, they're very, West Virginia is one of the smaller regions in the Great Lakes. And I don't think we ever had anyone elected to a higher post than Patricia. And so that was pride for us. And she has always carried herself in the most professional way. She is currently retired, She was the director of the education department at West Virginia State University and has many, many years' experience in the public school system. So Patricia, thank you so much. And you can come forward. And this next person, I think she's not going to ever come back again, because I said, is there any familiarity between this woman? This is my sister. So my sister Sue Lee is the principal of the middle school in Greenbrier County, and has been doing a great job. She was the multicultural director, Robert Graff. She was the first, I think, multicultural director at West Virginia Wesleyan College. So when they say that this is their first DEI, it's not. We were trying to bring about an inclusive and progressive program there. My brother-in-law is from Florida. They met at West Virginia Wesleyan. I only went to Wesleyan because the preacher told me that everyone who goes to Wesleyan finds their mate at Wesleyan. Well, I didn't find a mate. My brother, who came after I didn't find a mate, and my cousin didn't find a mate. But this was a real good match between Ray Lee. Ray, would you stand? From Delray Beach, Boynton Beach. And he won't want me to say this to you, but he's related to Coco Gauff. And we're all Coco Gauff fans. Is there anyone else that I have left out? If it is, I apologize. It's a mistake of the brain and not of the heart. So Ray and Sue, would you come to the front, please?
And the other panelist is Cheryl Pleer. She's a former principal of Mary C. Snow Westside Elementary, one of the largest elementary schools in the state, and also one of the poorest schools in the state. She also has some experience working with the West Virginia Department of Education through a program that was designed to help students by providing support around the state. And what I would like to start off with by saying is that we're going to cover different areas today. My experience I'm going to talk some about my experience as a high school principal. I was principal of South Charleston High School. I worked for the West Virginia Department of Education, Kanawha County Schools, and I finished my career. The last 20 years of my career, I worked at the school from which I graduated, West Virginia State University, and I served as chair of the education department. We need information about education today more than ever with things that are occurring. The climate of our nation and the world is at risk right now, but so are our children. We have to stay in touch with what is going on. And so a challenge is going to be issued today that we need representation at every state board of education meeting. And your state committee, I mean, we need to probably have people in different locations because it doesn't always meet in Charleston, but when it meets, we need to be there so that when these ideas are brought to the table, we can have some input. Also, in your local branches, your education committee should have someone present at every county board of education meeting because that's where a lot of things happen, and if you aren't there to speak to that, those changes can go on and you never know anything about them. A terrible bill was passed, Senate Bill 199, which gives teachers, elementary teachers, a green light to really take care of getting rid of problematic children. But in addition, I'm going to talk a little bit later today about the student assistance team process that is also in place that many people don't know about. But that is much stronger than that Senate Bill 199 that was recently reenacted. So what I'm going to do today is have each panelist to start by sharing from their perspective some of the things that can be done to help our children in school. And we're really blessed to have someone from the elementary level, to have someone from the middle school, junior high level, and then to have someone who can give us that athletic experience because many times our athletes, if we aren't careful, they can be used. You know, I think of one star athlete that we had in Kanawha County, Randy Moss. He did many things, and he did one thing near the end of his career that got him sidetracked and placed in an alternative school. But that didn't stop Randy nor his mother. They knew what to do. Randy went on, and as we know now, he is one of the stellar athletes that has been in professional football. So we'll start at the elementary level with Mrs. Pleer, and we'll move right on to the next level. We're going to bring our perspective. Then, if you have questions at the end of their presentation, please feel free to answer those. And I'm going to keep you on time. We'll have about 10 minutes for each presentation.
Thank you. And good morning to everyone. I am Cheryl Pleer. This is my sister. Louise and Doris were relatives of mine also. But we're all educators. And first of all, I want everyone to know, and I want to share with everybody that I am a child of God. And that God has led me through everything I have done in the education process. I started out as an elementary teacher, and I taught in a rural school. I then moved to another school in an area where it was upper middle class, so I'm aware of what goes on there at that level. And then as an administrator, I chose to be an administrator in schools of choice. And at that time, schools of choice were schools that had not met the annual yearly progress that they were supposed to meet, either in attendance or in academics. So I knew that I could take what I had learned from those experiences and move on to help students in troubled schools. While I was there, I got the opportunity to work for the State Department of Education as a school improvement specialist. And I got the chance to work with schools that had high poverty, schools that had a high percentage of African-American students, and schools that were low achieving. So I have served my time well. I prayed for every assignment that I went into, and God led me through the successes that I was able to have at those schools and with those children. And I always led by one of the things that is in the Bible: look beyond the faults to see the needs. Look beyond our faults. That's what our Lord and Savior does. He looks beyond our faults. He sees our needs. That was a message that I took in the school, because I knew that when students come to me and they have problems, it's not because they're bad people. It's because their needs are not being met. So the first thing I did was I looked to see what did they need. And I always asked my students, as a principal, when they came into my office, I would say, you tell me what happened in the situation, and then you tell me what we can do to help you. Because they will share exactly what it is that they need if you allow them to listen instead of yelling and screaming at them, which I did not do. I tried to follow my Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ, and how he listens to us. When we come to him and share our needs with him in prayer, that's the way I like to run my schools and my classroom. I know that the school system now is in a deplorable position. It's bad for everyone. It's worse for African American students. And we need to do something, and it needs to be done in an intentional way. We have a thing where we always say, oh, we're going to get this group together and we're going to get this committee together and we're going to do this. And we do that, but we have to do it with intention to keep things moving, to get things going for these children. I have seen how the bureaucracy has actually caused problems for students in school. And unless we, as knowledgeable people, step in for these students and these people, it's not going to change. So yes, we need to attend the board meetings. Yes, we need to, and that it's the state board meetings and all, we need to go to the legislator and we need to tell them what our needs are, what our students need. And what they need is not what they're being given. This new discipline policy is going to be a problem because teachers don't know how to deal with our students. There needs to be training for those teachers. If you're going to work in an area where you have high poverty and where there is a high percentage of African American students, then you need to know how to deal with them. And it is not by yelling at them, screaming at them, and putting them out of school. We need to meet their needs. There is an extreme need for mental health. An extreme need. Some of these children come to school, kindergarten age, they're angry and they don't even know why they're angry. They just know that they don't feel comfortable. It is our job to make sure that teachers are aware of what our students are dealing with before they step into that classroom. It's our job to do that. We need to give our communities the knowledge that they need, the understanding that they need in order to deal with these students. It's far beyond the schools. We can't let the schools fix our problems. We need to fix our problems as a community. And this is biblical too. For lack of knowledge, my people perish. A lot of people don't do things because they don't know. They don't know about the SAT process where they can come in as a parent, and if they see something is wrong with their child, they can get support instead of waiting until their child is expelled from school or there's an extreme behavior problem. We need to make sure, and this can be done in the churches too, make sure that we are not forgetting about our young people. I look around and I look at, I can imagine that the average age of us attending here would be probably 70. And I'm basing that on me because I'm 75. Where are our young people? They're not with us. And since they are not with us, what do we need to do? Go get them. Go get them. And it needs to be with intention. Intention. Don't say, oh, we need to do this. No, that's not enough. You need to go out there and go to the schools. Volunteer to help in the schools. See what's going on in those schools. Go out in the communities. See what's going on in your community. Don't sit in your house and just let things pass you by. You know, you see shootings and 14-year-old children killing their parents. That's a mental problem. And it didn't just happen at that moment. So we need to do something. If there's got to be any kind of legislation, it should be for mental health for our students. If you could see some of these kindergarten kids coming into school angry, mad, they don't know why they're mad, they're just mad, and they're just taking it out on everybody around them because they don't know any other way to let it out. And teachers need to be aware of that. I don't know how many kids I took into my office and I just sat them on my lap and they just cried. And then they told me, Mom didn't come home last night. Dad's in prison. I didn't get enough to eat last night. I don't know what's going to happen to me. They'll tell you that. But unless we're out there and we talk to these students, we're not going to know. And then help the parents. Don't look down on those single mothers. Those single mothers are doing the best they can. Don't look down on them. Give them a hand up. Don't push them back further down than they already are. The school system can only do so much. We as people, and as it was said, we started off in the church. That's where we need to be right now. And if the church has to get out there and get involved in what's happening in those schools, because at one time, the black churches were involved in what was going on in these schools. We can do the same thing now. But we have to get out of our comfort zone and with intention do something to help.
And I just want to piggyback on what she said about the school that she worked in. As I mentioned before, Mary C. Snow, where she was principal, was the lowest performing school in the state. And part of it was because they had a horrible calendar. They were on a year-round calendar. But under, and I'm going to brag on my sister, under her direction, that changed. They are now on a traditional calendar. While she was there as principal, their scores increased. She was followed by another young African-American principal who's doing a good job. The school is continuing to grow because of that nurturing atmosphere that was fostered at Mary C. Snow. Let's give her a round of applause. All right, our next panelist.
I'm Sue Lee. I'm the principal at Eastern Greenbrier Middle School. I have started out in Florida in the school system down there, taught there. We were recruited by West Virginia Wesleyan to go back there to work. We went back to try to make a difference. We were there several years, and when we went to West Virginia Wesleyan, we had already signed contracts in Charlotte. We declined those contracts and went to Wesleyan. You know, in thinking of our kids that were young at the time, 4 or 5, after a point at Wesleyan, we went to Charlotte, North Carolina, and that's where we spent the bulk of our career, in Charlotte. And then our mom became ill, and we moved back to West Virginia. So born and raised in Ronceverte, Greenbrier County, and my work career included Wesleyan. I worked for RISA, that was located not far from this church, and did professional development for teachers and principals in 6 counties in West Virginia. So education has always been a focus for me and for our family. At the middle school level, those are special chaps there. You know, you gotta love them. I tell my staff all the time, if you don't like middle school, go on to another school. You have to like them to be able to teach them. And our African-American middle school students, you know, the climate nowadays is tough sometimes for our students. And, you know, they are called names. And at my school, I have a 0 tolerance. I don't care. The N-word just isn't used. I'm not going to say it isn't used. If it is, there are consequences. And it doesn't matter. It's the word. It doesn't matter if they're using it towards Hispanic students it's the word that's hurtful. So I address that. With my parents, and I would like to think that every school operates this way, I tell my parents, I want you to partner with me to be the best foundation for your child. Some parents aren't comfortable with that. Thank you. And that's where I see other people becoming involved. If someone's not comfortable with going to the school, go with them. Say, I'm going to go with you to support your child, and we're going to be a great foundation for them. I want students to know, now with virtual school and staying home and taking classes, it's not the same education as being in the school. Our kids need to be in the school, and they need that support from all of us to be there to encourage them and, show everybody has positives that we can highlight. And that's what I like to do, is to make every child at my school feel important. I even tell them, if you have a problem, come to me. I'll deal with it. Don't you deal with it. That's where you get into trouble. Come to me. Let me handle, tough situations. And, sometimes at middle school that's not popular. And so I make ways where they can come and talk to me. Don't have to get permission from someone else. Or I position myself where they can come and tell me things, and I deal with it. I never say, Ray said that you were bullying them, because, at middle school, there's always repercussions. I don't put students in that situation. I don't put parents in that situation. I also tell parents, if students come home and say, Sarah called me this, or Sarah was bullying me today, but she didn't tell me, you got to give me the opportunity to deal with it. Call me. If you have to call me 3 times a day, you call 3 times a day. But, and just because your child or your grandchild's principal hasn't said that, that is, their job and accountability, and, get them involved and just be an integral part in your child's or your grandchild's or a neighbor's kid. Sometimes people don't know who to reach out to, or it can be embarrassing saying, my child needs this, but I don't know what to do. Just, help them along the way. My husband and I were talking about a couple of kids that have graduated, young men that have graduated, and kind of fallen off track. And now they've come back to where they've gotten themselves together. And I oftentimes say, if they had someone in their life at middle school or at high school that said, you can't do that. That's not the way to operate. Or this is what you should be doing. Just imagine the trajectory of their life, that if they had that guidance and direction along the way. Sometimes that's not their parent. Sometimes it's somebody else that says something. I know when we were growing up, it takes a village. It didn't matter if my mom said it or Miss Juanita down the street said it. It was going to happen. I know this day and age, sometimes we are hesitant because we don't know. Some parents don't want that. But we have to make an attempt. And, if you come across barriers there, then you deal with it a different way. But our kids have, you see the ones with strong parents, and you see the support they have, and every kid deserves that and needs that. And so we need to step in and be that. When my daughter was in high school, she worked at our church daycare. We were in Charlotte at the time. She said, Mom, my favorite baby in daycare is sick and in the hospital. Would you go with me to see her? I went with her to see her, and I came back and told my husband about her. She was probably 6 months old. She had tubes everywhere. She had asthma. She had pneumonia. mother was pretty young, and she had 3 kids, was a single mom. And her mom asked, when she gets out of the hospital, could you all keep her for a little bit? I can't do all 3 kids. We took her. When I went to pick her up, I thought it was a little bit odd that her mom had the bassinet and the swing and several bags for me to take. I thought it was a little bit odd, but okay. Off and on, her mom would say, I'd like to see Janae. Janae was her name. I'd like to see Janae maybe for the weekend or something. Probably 3 or 4 years later, her mom said, I think I want Janae to come back home. And you know how, I felt like, oh, I was worried about her. Can this happen? And she went back with her mom. Her mom moved to New York. We would see them probably once a year, go visit. One time we went to visit, and they were in an apartment. It was 2 families in a 2-bedroom apartment. 3 kids. Her 3 kids. The other family had 1 kid, and her mother was staying there as well. So it was about 8, 9 people in a 2-bedroom apartment. The kids begged to come back with us. So what do? We pack them up and bring them back with us. I knew, that she was getting money for them, but we wanted her to use that money to get herself together. And they were probably with us 3 or 4 years, and then they went back with her. So we went to visit them last summer, and one is at Virginia State, and the other 2 have taken technical school route. So it's good to see them, and good to see that they're doing well and being prosperous. But, our kids were older, and so we really didn't look to start over back then. But sometimes we just step in where we're needed, and, it gives me a good feeling to see that now they're successful. So I just encourage everyone to, when you see a need, step in, be there. I'm happy to share my information. If I can ever help, I'm happy to do that. Sometimes parents will come to me and say, well, I had a parent come one time, and she said, there was a passage that was given to my son. He's a 3rd grader at an elementary school, and it had some racial connotations in it. It was talking about when slaves, if you were a slave, what would you want your name to be? And so I was like, wow, how could that be part of the curriculum now? And so, I called that principal and said, wait a minute. I don't know how this got through, but you need to look at this curriculum. And they did remove that from the curriculum. But in this day and age, that was in curriculum that was adopted by our state, brought into our school, and nobody, I don't believe that nobody knew. I do believe that it got in, they knew, and had hoped that it would get through. But some things we just have to address and fall on the carpet. And I do agree. People need to be at school board meetings. We need to call our elected officials, tell them what we need, and then hold them accountable, because we tell them what they need. I hear people all the time, and I've called people, and I've seen no change. But then that's got to be followed up with our vote later. Those aren't the people that need to stay in. So we've got to be active and be strong, and stay together as a group and support each other. I thank you all for the opportunity to be here and speak.
Good morning, everyone. Just to let you know, when you're asked to do something, that means someone sees something, feel like you have something to say. So I appreciate that. Appreciate, sister-in-law. I don't know if it was a nepotism thing, but I'm here. We both are. But I'm Ray Lee, and just to give you a little bit about my background, you know, and all of that came out. Sue and I met at Wesley, and perseverance and persistency is always a key of mine. And I have to tell the story. I asked Sue out 6 times, and she turned all 6 times. so that's just part of my DNA. I'm going to be persistent, especially if I see something that's a need or something that needs to get done, and it's the right thing to do. A little bit about my background. When I left Wesleyan, I was a Florida State Trooper. I was Highway Patrol down in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. Left that, went into teaching. I felt like the job that I was doing at the time was more of a reactive job than a proactive. What can I do to keep kids running into me, even adults? So I left the Highway Patrol, went into the school system there in Palm Beach County, and then that's when Wesleyan. And I say this, Wesleyan was a good place for me. Not only did I, get my degree from there, but had an opportunity to give back. Some of the same young men that I coached in high school, I ended up sending them to Wesleyan. And then 2 years later, got to coach again at Wesleyan. So when you're in a profession like this, it's always, what kind of seed can I plant? And wherever you are, you're planting seed if you're doing it the right way. And all you want to do is see those seeds flourish and see those young men that I coached at high school. They also came back to Florida and started doing the same thing. So when we left Wesleyan, we go to Charlotte. I get to Charlotte, still coaching, and I was head coach at Johnson C. Smith University for about 3 years. I'll say it in the most respectful and kind way. They were just moving a little bit too slow for my persistence. So I left, probably left at that time the wrong way, but I was a young guy, make things happen. Then I ended up in the school system in Charlotte. All intentions of getting back into coaching, and ended up at a school, it was a good school, predominantly white school. Made our AYPs, all of that, blue ribbon school, presidential seal, all of that. And then to see our black students that came to that school, hopefully y'all won't get upset with me by saying that's what's on my birth certificate. So the black students that came to our school, those were the ones that you want to try and really just help along. Hey, I know this environment is different for you, but you take a different approach with it. The different approach is you're not going to bend the rules, you're going to help you understand it. When you start looking at them in an environment like that, you want to make them understand you're no different from them. You're just as smart as them. No matter where you're coming from. And I used to preach it to them all the time. Hey, man, you don't have to be a victim of your circumstances. Let your circumstances be your motivator. So when you can understand that, yes, it's going to take a little bit more work. You got to do a little bit extra. And I always use this analogy that I got from my dad, and he same messages. I can still hear those messages when I'm talking to these young men. It doesn't matter the young men that I talk with, especially the black students. I got ridiculed one time when I said that, especially our black students. And I said it in the presence of someone that doesn't look like me. And he goes, well, why would you say that? That's what we are. We have to have that extra. And the analogy that my dad used, he said, hey, man, listen. And that's how my dad talked to me. Hey, man, listen. If you're running a race and you got to go around that track one full lap, You're starting at the finish line. They're starting down here in the corner. They ain't got 100 yards to go. Kind of let that sink in a little bit. So when he says you got to work, and I'll guarantee you, everybody in here, the age that you mentioned, not quite there. I'm quite sure you've heard you got to work twice as hard. We're not going to make excuses, but you got to work twice as hard. But by working twice as hard, we don't need obstacles in front of us. And I think that's the purpose of the panel here, is to try to present some things and some tools. I always say we got to have tools in order to build a house. And those tools have to be the tools where it's not always a fist fight. It's not always a cussing match. It's not always, the gang thing. We got to have this tool up here in place. Now, moving forward to say my experiences, I ended up in this school system and got asked to be a principal. No offense to you. That was not on my radar to be a principal. I'll just tell you. It was nowhere on my radar. So I'm in this school, and I go to a middle school. My wife worked at a middle school, so there were times I'd go by and visit her, and I would have to take kids home. Didn't have rides and all that. That was a different time where we were trusted with that. And I would drop by her middle school, and I was, man, there's no way I could work at the middle school. Kids were everywhere. They were out at their little recess time or whatever it was, break time. I mean, they're running everywhere. And I just looked at it. I was like, hey, I got to go. So I left. And when I left, I just said, I'd never work at a middle school. Never say never. I always tell people that. So my first full-time assistant principal job was at a middle school. And I'll say this. The night before my first day of school, I had never been so nervous to go work at this middle school. But middle school is probably the most impressionable age for me. And I got there, worked at that middle school about 4 years. That's when I got asked to be a principal, right mid-year. Now, the middle school they were sending me to. So you know when you get called to the superintendent's office, I think y'all may be able to relate to that. You kind of like, all right, why am I being called to the superintendent's office? Did a parent that I make mad? Find something in my past that has come up? That principal thing was the furthest thing from my mind. And I will say this. We had a black superintendent, Dr. James Hughes. You can look him up, write him down. And I walked in his office and he said, I heard some things about you. And I got a school that's in trouble. I need your help. But it's between you and another young man. And by him saying it in the manner that he said it, looking at him, he's looking like me. He's entrusted me. I couldn't say no if he offered. It was like my dad or my father asking me to do something. 2 days later, I get a phone call. I'm principal. And the school, I had no idea about this school. Zero. Charlotte Mecklenburg school system, huge school system. So I minded my business. I went to my school where I worked, made sure the kids in that school did what they were supposed to do. I come home, I called my wife and I said, I'm leaving the superintendent's office. And she was like, oh, okay, what happened? No, nothing bad. I said, I think I'm getting ready to get moved to another school. I told her about the conversation I had with Dr. Hughes. She said, oh, I know where you're going. No, she asked, do you know where the school is? I said, no. He said, he'd rather not say it at the time. So she said, so that should have been a hint right there. So I say to my wife, she goes, oh, I know where you're going. Not that she had an inside ear or anything like that, but she was a mentor in the school. They had a turnover rate of like 94% every year. So she tells me, Oh, you're going to James Martin. I bet you that's where it is. Sure enough, that's where it was. It was it wasn't in the area of high poverty, but we had 38 buses, black students, Hispanic. After I got settled, you have to do your attendance report. Principals understand it. You have to do an attendance report. So I'm looking at the demographic. I had the largest middle school, not just in Mecklenburg County, but in the state of North Carolina. We had 2,200 middle school students, 6th, 7th, 8th grade. When I got there, it was on a Friday. I started on a Friday. Got introduced to the staff on Thursday. That was the day that I was offered the job. The superintendent takes me over to the assistant superintendent, takes me over to the school, introduces me to the staff, shows me around a little bit, takes me to the office, drop the keys on the desk and go, you start tomorrow. And I was just kind of like, okay. And I mean, none of it sunk in. But when I went there the very first day, we still kind of laugh about this a little bit. Normally just wear shirt and tie. I put on a suit that day. My wife speaks up, she goes, where you going? I said, oh, I'm the principal. I'm wearing my suit today. So she goes, okay, all right. Lays her head back down. Have a good day. That's just what she said. And I'm setting all of this up to tell you what we do. My very first day there, I didn't say a word to anyone. I walked around with cards, text cards, and just walked the campus. Remember, 2,200 middle school students. We had 6 fights, 5 fire alarms. I will say this, the kids were smart. They never pulled that fire alarm during lunchtime. I come back home. Now, let my wife tell it. I came back home with my shoes in my hand, my tie tied around my head, my coat thrown over somewhere else. But I came back home. First thing she said to me, how was it? And I said, it can be fixed. What I saw mostly was adults that didn't hold anyone accountable to it. That was my biggest thing, and I laid every one of those cards out. If you ever read the book, Stephen Covey, Big Rocks, Little Rocks, first thing we had to do was get discipline under control. It was totally out of, when I say totally out of control, totally out of control. The adults in the building basically did this. So my first thing that I did, and this is where a lot of things that both of the young ladies have said, is involvement. Everybody's got to be involved. So the first thing I did, I met with the staff. I said, tell me the problem that you're having, how the way it is. And before I get to that point, when I saw parents sending their kids to a place that's entrusting us, educate them and take care of them and to make sure they're safe, that hurt me. I'll just tell you, flat out hurt me to see that kind of environment, knowing that people sending their kids, because I know how we felt our children. We wanted to make sure our children were safe, make sure our children were educated. That was not happening. So I started with staff first. Tell me what's happening. So we're going to eliminate excuses. So after I met with the staff, they told me, I wrote it down. Okay, that's the easy fix. Then I met with the administrator. Told the administrator, these are the problems. No, I didn't know anyone in that school. No one knew me. So it was nothing friendship. And I always say this, even if it was friendship is one thing, business is another. And I had to deal with that later on with a friend that was in the building. So you deal with the problem that's on the table. It has nothing to do with our friendship. We've got to deal with this. So made sure the teachers understood. Then I went to the administrator. This is the problem. This is how we're going to fix it. When I say by May, holding people accountable. Then the next year, I was able, because I'll just say it, and I'm not calling names, so video, I call it name. I had 5 assistant principals. I got rid of 4 of them. Kept 1. I'm starting fresh. We're gonna have a fresh mind of people in here, because 4 that I ended up saying I shouldn't say got rid of them. I just didn't go back and told assistant superintendent get some. But those 4 were so complacent. When you're dealing with education, children, you can't be complacent. You got to be direct. You got to be direct. You got to ask it. You got to do it. So once we got that on track, and it was a local performance school, moved the 8th graders on. Now we got ones 6th grade on. Brought in those 6th graders. Told the assistant principal, they become 8th graders. Have the school. Our discipline was up here, and each year it slowly came down. And by the time even when we started next year, we didn't have a fight build until after Thanksgiving. It was our very first fight. And it was all because of expectation. Everybody needs to be held to expectation. Now, live by these 3 things: respect, responsibility, accountability. Put those 3 things in place, that basically smooths everything out. Now, I stayed in that for a while. Then, I'll just say I truly miss coaching. Coaching is a place where you can really make it. Billy Graham had a quote: a coach has more of an impact, more students in one season than you can in a lifetime. So I take pride in being a coach. Wins and losses, my wins and losses, people always ask, how many games have you won? How many, hey man, my wins and losses, that's what I got asked when I took over the job at Greenbrier East. I'm in Woodrow's territory. I have to say that kind of quietly. But it's okay. We getting our fair share back with them. They'll get us 2 or 3 times, and then we get them 2 or 3 times. But whenever people ask me about wins and losses, how many games you gonna win this year? Oh, you can't win over there. You can't. Some things I always say the challenge to people say you can't always. That's my motivator. It's always my motivator. Even right here, things that we're talking about today as to how to get our kids on track. Oh, that can't be done. Yes, it can. You just have to be persistent. You have to make sure you hit the right button. You have to knock on the right door. But my wins and losses, and I said, talk to me 5 or 6 years after you guys have graduated. And then you can judge me on my wins and losses. Because it's not all about winning to me, and my wife can vouch for this. I'm one of the world's worst losers. I hate it. I say, but when it comes to these young men here, my win is to see them graduate from high school. My win is to see them be productive citizens. My win is to see them be responsible, family, husband. Those are my victories there. My win is if I can, and I'm going to say this in a respectful manner because I'm not a man of the cloth, but I follow the cloth, is to preach to them every chance I get scripture that tells them something about life. In our locker room, on our shirt sleeve, our motto is iron sharpens iron. That's biblical. Proverbs 27:17. And we live by that. We can make each other better by upholding standards and expectation and holding each other accountable. We're sharp. when we talk about what takes place in the school system and how we can make our kids better, give them a better environment, we have to hold each other. Go back to what I'm horrible with names, but the young lady there at the end, training. We have to have training, especially dealing. And I'll just say, you're dealing with us. You haven't been around. You don't know what makes us. Now, I went through both integration and segregation at a young age. When I say at a young age, the age that we're talking about, middle school age. And to have people that can't understand your area, then they take you out and put you somewhere else. You got to have training. And I say it respectfully. You make the rules. You hadn't taught us. You hadn't trained people that's going to be teaching us. So you need to have those things in place to say that. Now I'm sitting here back in West Virginia. We live in Lewisburg. I said this to one of my coaches when we were sitting in our coach's office. Something came up, and he was like, Coach, I said, man, you can't be a prophet in your own land. People that you work around every single day don't feel like you have any value to add. I have the years that I've been a principal, and I've been a principal in far worse schools than what I'm in right now. I don't get, Coach, tell me when you were a principal, how did this work? You know what? One comes from you. I'm not trying to degrade or anything like that. When you have those problems and those issues, you need to seek help. Don't be afraid to ask questions. I've been coaching for a while. I still ask questions. I always tell people, the day that I say I know everything about football, it's time for me to get out. So the people that's in the school that make all of these rules and everything, they need all of us. Now, I'm going to end because I think it's getting close to that time. I always say when you're the last speaker, you're in between lunch and getting out of here. So I'm going to make sure that we end it. But everything that, I was basically taking notes. Every chance that you can pass on to a parent, talk about the parent. Make sure they attend open house. That's where the value is. That's where they're going to explain to you what the school expectations are, what's expected there, what you're going to get. I'm talking from a principal standpoint. We used to get that. Had a nice open house, nice walk around. Then when something happened, you weren't there. Now you want to blame everybody else for that fault. Well, we explained this at open house. Same thing with coaching. As a coach, I have a parent. I explain everything that's going to take place, our expectations. This is what we're going to do. Now, if they want to be a part of this, this is what they have to do. So in the meantime, as my wife said, it takes a village. It takes all of us. And don't ever feel shy. Go out to the school and say, hey, what can I do to help? What can I do to volunteer? They're looking for that. I'd say this, I appreciate the time. I probably sit here and give more information, but I know we're on time. But I appreciate being a part of it.
Thank you. Now, I want to give you some food for thought. You have heard many very important things that we've talked about, how to deal with children. But I want to read something to you, and I want to get your reaction. I'm reading from Senate Bill 199 about the protocol for when a grade kindergarten through 6th teacher in an elementary setting determines that the behavior of the student is violent, threatening, or intimidating towards staff or peers, or creates an unsafe learning environment, or impedes on the other student's ability to learn in a safe environment. Now, what happens, here again, they're talking about a teacher is able to make that decision to suspend that child or refer them to this committee. And if that teacher has not had training with how to deal with children. And we're talking about children in kindergarten through 6th. Think about what is going to happen to these children who are coming from homes where they may not have the support that they need. And so that's why it is up to us to get out there. I'm on the education committee with the Charleston NAACP, and I'm going to share an actual experience that happened at a high school. An African-American student was suspended from a school bus for fighting. The parent called our branch, and they asked me to go to the hearing. I went to the hearing, parent was there, and the first thing that I asked was, I said, I would like to see the video from the fight on the school bus. So she said, are you an attorney? And I said, no, I'm a citizen. I'm on the NAACP branch, but I work at West Virginia State University. Reluctantly, she showed us the video, and the video showed that the student who had been suspended had done nothing other than defend himself. So I said, so how long has this child been out of school? He had been out of school for a week. I said, so what we're going to do right now is we're going to develop a student assistance team process so that this child can come back to school tomorrow and so that he gets the support that he needs to get all of his work made up. And then I want a follow-up report sent to me and to the parent so that we can see what interventions you have done on behalf of that child, because we don't want this to stop his progress. So she was the assistant principal. She said, well, we'll do it. I said, thank you very much. I gave her my information. They followed up on that. I checked back with the parent. The school did everything that they needed to do. The child was reinstated, was able to get back on the athletic team that he had been kicked off of. And that's the kind of stand we have to take. You don't have to be, I wasn't threatening. I was just giving that child the rights that he had. And the mother she said, I didn't know that you could ask for that. So I gave her a copy. I always carry this with me, this one-page student assistance team process information. This is what your child is entitled to. So if your child, let's say your child doesn't have appropriate clothing, the student assistance team can help with that. Your child cannot read. Your child can get help with that. It's a shame now that schools aren't teaching reading and writing the way they should. In Kanawha County, they no longer teach how to print with the Zahner-Blosser method that we learned when we were in school. They don't even know cursive right. My niece gave some of my grandchildren, one of them in the 10th grade, gave them money for Christmas, but they had a card, and she had written a note in it. She said, I want you to read that to me. He said, I can't read cursive. I was shocked. I said, well, I went to Dollar Tree. I found a cursive book, which I gave him, and I said, this is what we have to do. So we need to be united as a community. Yes, it's going to take time, but if you have an education committee in your NAACP branch, it needs to have several people on it so that one person isn't doing all of the work, so that you can meet as a team and decide what can you do to help in these schools where children need our support. When I took over as principal at Roosevelt Junior High School, our school was the poorest junior high school in the county. We had 5 housing projects that fed into our school. One of the housing projects was 1.5 miles away from the school. And at my open house, I learned from the parents that those children had to walk to school. I said, well, this is what we're going to do. I want 15 of you to be prepared at the next board meeting. And I want you to explain what your child goes through when it rains, when it snows, when someone throws things at them from a car. I want you to explain those hazards. They signed up. We went to the board meeting, 15 delegates from Roosevelt Junior High School. The first 3 spoke, and they were outstanding. After the third person spoke, the superintendent said, we're going to go into executive session at this time. They went into executive session. They talked for about 5 minutes. They came out. He said, Mrs. Petty, you will have a school bus on Monday for your children. And that's because those parents united. They saw the strength. And I had the strongest parent advisory council. Our little poor achieving school, within 3 years, we became a West Virginia School of Excellence. But I trained my staff. we had training in how to deal with behavior problems, what to do to have excellent programs in your school, how to teach and be focused. I went into the classrooms and observed so that I saw that this was happening. So that's how we make schools accountable, through training, through dedicated staff. I had staff turnover. I surely did, and I was glad when they left because I wanted people there who cared about children. And I really knew we had arrived. We had a Christmas program, and one of my teachers who was very wealthy, I saw her go over and hug a little kid who was crying because his parents were in jail at Christmas time. And when I saw her do that, I got chill bumps. And I said, I am so proud of you. She said, I just love being. So that's the kind of atmosphere we want our staff to have. You aren't going to have a good school until that staff becomes intentional, involved, and they're caring. And it's up to us as citizens to see that that happens. So thank you so much for your attention. Are there any questions or comments? Thank you so much.
on the fountain. Now, allegedly, it was for a social sciences project. Well, the mother of the child that posted the picture was a teacher at the school. And she put this long statement on Facebook stating, hey, this is good. You know, this is my daughter. My daughter is biracial. She's an academic this. She plays basketball. And I asked the question, what does that matter? The point is, another child saw it, didn't understand why it was up, became afraid, alarmed her mother, blah, 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 blah. So we went back and forth for about a good hour and a half before she finally came to the understanding that it doesn't matter what the intent was. The law says it doesn't matter, the intent versus the impact. It still had an impact on a child's life. And so I also spoke with the principal about it. And I said, you know, right now the time is too sensitive in nature for our kids to be creating scenarios like this in our schools and having other children to participate in it. It's still sore. It still hurts. And you're not trained to address it. So don't do it. You know, and the principal said, well, I never looked at it like that. I said, we never do when the shoe is on the other foot. I said, so for every child that's like, oh, this is a neat experience, there's some child that's saying, they did that to my grandparent? My mom and dad had to go through that? And so the new local newsletter, he was trying to buffer. I'm like, no, there's no buffeting. I'm not going to back down from what I'm saying. That should have never happened in 2024, 2025. You know, so we do have to be aware of what's going on in our school.
One thing out. I think it is grossly unfair that when a white child calls a black child the N-word, the white child gets 2 days in school suspension and the black child gets 3 days or 5 days out of school. We need to look at that. I think we can change things. There are policies, but they're not interpreted. You have to train how that could be done. We have to move on to our business, economic. We have someone in Ohio, and we have Reverend Hamby here. We're going to give us a special guest going to provide us with more information. But can we all give these terrific people a hand? Your hand? Okay, we're going to have to go downstairs to see the economic development